Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sleep Space. Tonight, we'll talk about something that rests just beyond the edges of awareness, the place your mind goes when you're gone. Not gone in the tragic sense, but gone in the simple, everyday way. When your thoughts fade, when your name dissolves, when the hum of the world falls silent and only the quiet remains. Every night you disappear. You close your eyes, feel the body soften into the sheets, and something begins to slip. You don't feel yourself leaving. There's no farewell. One moment, you're here, in this body, in this story, and the next, you're not. You might dream, you might drift, but at some point in every night's journey, there's a gap, a blank space where you were nowhere and no one. And yet, when you return, you say, I slept well, as if you were there the whole time. That small gap, that silent nowhere, is what we're exploring tonight.
Mm.
It's a strange thing to think that your mind can vanish. You experience so much through it: colours, memories, sensations, laughter, pain, and yet there are moments when all of it stops. Where do you go when that happens? You might assume that the answer lies in the brain, that when neurons stop firing in a certain pattern, consciousness simply pauses, like a screen gone dark. But even that doesn't capture the depth of the mystery, because what exactly is pausing? What is the screen that goes dark? To scientists, the void of deep sleep is the lowest measurable level of consciousness. Brain waves slow into long, rolling rhythms. Sensory input is mostly blocked. The regions that construct the sense of self fall silent. You're as close to nothing as you can be while still alive. But from your own perspective, from inside experience, this isn't just low activity. It's a vanishing, a disappearance of time itself. It's one of the only things in life you can't witness directly. You can't watch yourself fall into it. You can't describe what it's like because like requires experience, and there is none there. And yet every night you touch it, or rather, you become it. This is what some traditions have called the little death, the mind dissolving back into stillness, the individual melting into something vast and undefined. From a biological view, the body simply rests, restores energy, repairs tissue. But consciousness, the part of you that notices, is gone. Not travelling through dreams, not hidden behind thoughts, just not there. And still, in the morning, something wakes up. The lights flicker back on. Awareness returns. Memory, identity, story, all reassembled in an instant. How does that happen? What bridge connects the nothing to the something? Think of it this way: consciousness might be less like a flame that burns continuously, and more like a current that flickers in and out, not extinguished, but folded into a deeper layer of existence when you rest. You can imagine the void as a kind of cosmic silence, not empty, but pregnant with potential, like the space between two breaths, or the pause before a wave returns to shore. In that space, there is no you, no observer, no sound, and yet somehow it gives rise to all of it. Some philosophers have wondered if this place isn't actually somewhere your mind goes, but something it returns to. A background state that's always there, beneath thought and form. You don't enter it, you uncover it briefly when everything else fades away. Modern neuroscience can map the stages of sleep, track brain activity, and explain what happens to memory and perception, but it still can't locate consciousness itself. It can find the mechanisms, but not the experiencer. When you think about that every scientific explanation still can't explain who is having the experience, it starts to sound less like a mystery of biology and more like a mystery of being. Imagine for a moment that consciousness isn't produced by the brain, but filtered through it, the way sunlight filters through a window. When the window is open, light pours in. When it's closed, darkness returns. But the light itself was never gone. Maybe that's what happens when you're gone. The filter closes, the self quiets, and awareness slips back into its source, a vast field of potential that has no name or form. The strange thing is, this void might not be as far from your waking life as it seems. You've already touched it in tiny ways. when you lose yourself in music or stare at the sky until the edges of thought dissolve. Those moments when you forget yourself, not in distraction, but in absorption, are hints of that same nothingness, shimmering beneath every experience. You spend most of your life trying to stay somewhere, in memory, in plans, in meaning, but this mysterious place you return to each night reminds you that underneath all of it, there is always a stillness that doesn't need to be anything. You might wonder what that means for the self, the sense of I. If you can completely vanish for hours each night and return as though nothing happened, what does that say about what you truly are? It suggests that you're not the stream of thoughts you identify with. You're not the story that continues day to day. Those things appear and disappear, but something more fundamental must exist to notice their absence, or to reappear afterward. It's as if consciousness is playing hide and seek with itself. When you're awake, it hides behind the you, behind the face, the name, the memories. When you're gone, it hides behind the void, featureless, still, unseen. And perhaps, in some strange way, they're not two different places at all. You can feel this intuitively if you sit in silence long enough. The thoughts slow, the background quiet grows, and beneath it, there's something that doesn't change. That stillness is easy to overlook because it isn't loud, but it's the same silence that greets you every night when you dissolve into sleep, the same vastness that carries you back into being every morning. When you start to sense that connection, the void becomes less frightening. It's not a place of loss, but of return. You realize that what disappears at night isn't you in the deepest sense, only the surface, the part that's constantly changing, constantly narrating. The rest of you, the awareness that experiences everything, may never truly go anywhere at all. Think about how even time seems to disappear when you're gone. You don't experience hours passing. You close your eyes, and suddenly it's morning. To your mind, there's no gap, no in between. The only way to describe that is as a total absence of time. That same timeless quality is found in the void itself. It isn't within time or outside it. It's what time arises from. The ticking of the clock, the rise and fall of days, are like ripples moving across something infinitely still beneath them. So when you sink into that stillness each night, you might not be falling into nothing. You might be returning to the foundation of everything. It's a humbling thought, the idea that the same consciousness that animates your waking life might also dissolve into the same boundless field that gave rise to the universe. Because before there was light, before there were stars, before there was even space, there was stillness. And maybe, in your own way, you revisit that ancient stillness every night. When you wake, the self rebuilds, the thoughts, the memories, the story of who you are, all reassemble in seconds. But maybe what wakes isn't just a brain turning on. Maybe it's that vast awareness stepping back into form, putting on the costume of identity again, ready to play its part in another day. And then, when you finally rest again, it takes off the costume and sinks back into the quiet. The truth is, no one fully knows what happens in that place. Not the scientists, not the mystics, not the philosophers. But maybe that's part of its beauty. Maybe it's not meant to be understood, but experienced, and then forgotten, as it always is. When you fall asleep, the transition feels simple. One moment you're lying there, and the next, you're gone. But if you could watch that process from the inside, you'd see it's not a sudden drop, but a gentle unraveling. At first, there's the fading of the world around you, the quiet hum of the room, the slow retreat of thoughts, the soft collapse of attention. Then the body begins to surrender its hold. Muscles loosen, breath steadies. Your brain shifts its rhythm, moving from alert waves to slower, rolling tides of rest. It's a graceful collapse of awareness. But somewhere in that descent, something strange happens. The you, who is aware of all of this, simply stops being there. It's as if the curtain falls, not just on the world, but on the one watching it. The mind doesn't record that moment because the very thing that could have remembered it, awareness itself, has gone offline. What's left behind is a mystery, a body still pulsing with life, a brain still active in deep biological rhythms, but no one home inside the experience. That's where science and philosophy meet, at the edge of what we can measure and what we can know. Neuroscientists can track every stage of sleep, every pattern of brain activity. They can tell when you're dreaming, when you're in deep sleep, when you're nearly awake again, but none of that tells them what it's like from the inside, because the inside, the conscious viewpoint, has vanished. It's the same with anesthesia. When you're put under, something eerily similar happens. You close your eyes, maybe feel the cold rush of the IV, and then nothing. Not darkness, not dreams, not even time, just absence. One moment, there's the sterile brightness of a hospital room, the quiet voices of doctors. The next, there's a gap, and then without warning, awareness returns, as if no time has passed at all. That gap might last seconds, hours, even longer. But to you, it's instant. You could go through an entire operation, and to your consciousness, it's as if it never happened. That's what makes anesthesia so strange. It doesn't just dim consciousness, it erases it completely. Sleep lets your awareness fade in and out through dreams, but anesthesia removes the dreamer altogether. You don't even have the sense of being gone. There's not even the thought, I am unconscious. It's pure nothingness. And yet when you return perfectly, as though consciousness had been paused and unpaused, like a movie continuing from the same frame. But what if it isn't a pause? What if it's a journey into the same stillness that sleep reveals? The same infinite background where awareness withdraws? The brain's chemistry might differ between sleep and anesthesia, one natural, one induced, but the experience, or rather the lack of it, points to the same question. If you can completely cease to exist as an experiencer and then come back, what exactly are you? The physical explanation says you never left, that your brain kept functioning, just without self-awareness. But the deeper mystery remains. How does awareness emerge at all? What flips the switch from no one to someone? You can imagine consciousness like the light of a projector. When you're awake, the reel of life spins. Thoughts, sensations, memories, all projected onto the screen of your mind. But during deep sleep or anesthesia, the projector doesn't just pause, the light itself turns off. When it turns back on, the movie continues. The story picks up exactly where it left off. You remember your name, your world, your identity, as if they'd been waiting just behind the curtain. But the question lingers. What happens to the light when it's off? From a purely scientific view, it's easy to say it stops. But that answer doesn't satisfy the human experience of being, the part of you that senses there's something more than brain chemistry. Because what is this awareness that can disappear so completely, yet return so perfectly intact? What kind of existence can vanish and reappear without damage or gap? It's tempting to think that when you're gone, that nothing continues. But perhaps that nothingness isn't an absence of being, but a return to something too vast for the mind to grasp. Anesthesia might offer a glimpse into that. While you're under, your brain's communication networks shut down. The regions that form your sense of self go quiet. But deep beneath that silence, some primal biological awareness still hums, keeping your heart beating, your lungs working. You're not completely gone, just the conscious layer. It's like standing in a house and turning off all the lights. The structure is still there, the foundation still holds, but without the illumination, you can't see any of it. When the lights return, everything reappears exactly as before. And yet, something feels uncanny about how seamlessly it happens. That instant of return, that flicker from void to awareness, might be one of the most mysterious moments of all human experience. It's so ordinary, happening to everyone who's ever slept or been under anesthesia, and yet it brushes against the edges of existence itself. You disappear, and then you're back. But from your own point of view, you never left. So maybe the void isn't a place you travel to, but a kind of hidden constant, a space beyond perception, beyond time, that your consciousness falls back into whenever it lets go. Some philosophers suggest that this is the true nature of mind, not something that exists only when thoughts are happening, but something deeper, something that exists even when there are no thoughts at all. Anesthesia and deep sleep simply remove all the noise, revealing what's underneath, or perhaps what was never meant to be seen. And if you look closely at how you experience waking, you'll notice something subtle. Consciousness doesn't gradually appear. It snaps into place one moment it's not there, the next it is. That suddenness, that leap from nothing to something, mirrors the universe itself. The Big Bang, too, was a leap from nothing into something, a flash of existence out of emptiness. Maybe consciousness is repeating that event every time you wake up. Maybe the void you vanish into isn't a blank space, but the same fertile nothingness that gave birth to everything. The brain might just be the mechanism that channels it, like a radio tuning in to a signal that's always there. During anesthesia or deep sleep, the dial turns away and the signal fades, but it's never lost, only momentarily unheard. And when you return, you don't create consciousness, you receive it again. That idea that consciousness is fundamental and the brain is its temporary receiver is still considered speculative by science, but it resonates with something you can feel. Because when you try to remember what nothing felt like, you can't, and yet something in you knows that nothing was there. It's like a faint echo of the infinite. Perhaps that's why the void has always fascinated humanity. In ancient traditions, it was seen not as emptiness, but as the source of everything, the Tao, the cosmic womb, the silent mind. Even modern physics describes the vacuum of space not as nothing, but as a sea of potential energy, a canvas where particles flicker into and out of existence. In that sense, maybe you're not gone when you sleep or go under anesthesia. Maybe you're submerged back into the same sea, temporarily dissolved into the background of reality itself. And when the self returns, it rises like a wave, unique, momentary, but made of the same infinite ocean. You've experienced this countless times without noticing. Each night, each faint dip into unconsciousness is a rehearsal for the great mystery, the dissolution of the self and the effortless return. It might be that what you call you is simply the surface of awareness, appearing and disappearing, while the true nature of consciousness, that vast, silent background, never actually goes anywhere. Anesthesia and sleep reveal the same truth from two different directions. One is natural, rhythmic, built into the cycle of life. The other is artificial, induced, a glimpse created by human science. But both pull back the veil in the same way, by showing that the self can vanish, and yet what it arises from remains untouched. If you imagine that place, that stillness, it might not be somewhere else. It might be right here, underneath every thought you've ever had. You don't notice it because you're always looking at things, never at the silence that makes looking possible. Sleep and anesthesia strip that away. They leave you with nothing to look at, no thought, no dream, no time, and so awareness collapses into its own source. It's as if the universe itself takes a breath in, and then, when you wake, it exhales, and you appear again, the same as before, but with a hint, maybe, of something familiar hidden in that blankness. Because every time you return from that nothing, you've touched the edges of what it means to exist at all. You can't bring it back with you, but it leaves an imprint, a soft knowing that even in the deepest absence, something remains. Something that isn't bound by thought, or identity, or even time. Something that might not be yours at all, but the same awareness shared by everything that has ever been. There's something unsettling about how easily you disappear. Hours of sleep pass without your awareness. Under anesthesia, entire chapters of time are erased, and yet, when you return, you pick up the story as if you never left. It raises a quiet question. How do you know that the you who wakes is the same one who fell asleep? You assume continuity because memory tells you so. You remember your room, your life, your name. The mind reconstructs its pattern, and the story resumes. But what if memory is just the scaffolding, and the self that occupies it isn't as constant as it seems? Imagine a candle flame. You can protect it, watch it flicker, even pause to admire it. But the flame that burns now isn't the same flame as a moment ago. It looks continuous, but every instant it's consuming new air, new wax, constantly replacing itself. The illusion of continuity hides a constant becoming. Perhaps consciousness is the same. Each time you return from nothing, from sleep, from anesthesia, from the deep pause between thoughts, what comes back isn't exactly what went away. It's a new emergence, wearing the same pattern. You remember your life, but memory is like the groove in a record. It gives form to the sound, but the music is being played fresh each time. If that's true, then what are you really? The pattern or the awareness that animates it? You can test this in subtle ways. When you wake up, notice how the mind takes a moment to load. At first, there's just a blur, a simple sense of being, before memory kicks in and says, "Oh, right, I'm here. This is my room. This is my life." That moment before the story begins might be the purest glimpse you ever get of yourself. Awareness before identity. The stillness before the world. It's so fleeting you almost never catch it. But that blank moment is the same space you dissolve into every night. The same void that takes you under anesthesia. And that raises something even deeper. If yourself disappears completely and reappears seamlessly, what holds the continuity together? From a physical view, the answer is memory. Your brain stores the pattern, and when consciousness returns, it rebuilds the sense of me. But there's something more mysterious happening. Memory alone doesn't explain the feeling of presence, the spark that says, "I am." Even if you could replicate every one of your memories in another brain, would that new consciousness be you? Or would it just be another flame lit from the same pattern? You begin to see that you might not be a single, continuous entity at all. You might be a series of awakenings, moments of awareness flickering into being, one after another, each believing it's the same as before. If that sounds unsettling, it's only because you've been trained to think of identity as fixed, a thread that stretches unbroken through time. But what if identity isn't a thread, but a rhythm, a pulse between being and non-being, between form and formlessness? Every night you vanish. Every morning you return. Every thought arises, then dissolves. Every breath you take is an echo of that same rhythm, the inhale of creation, the exhale of silence. When you look closely, continuity starts to look less like a line and more like a wave. You're not a static being moving through time, but a constant oscillation between something and nothing. Maybe that's why deep sleep feels so restorative. It's not just rest, it's a kind of reset, a return to the source. When you wake, you emerge renewed, because you've touched the formless background again, however briefly. Anesthesia is like a deeper version of that, a longer, more complete surrender. You don't just forget yourself, you become absence itself. And when awareness flickers back on, it rebuilds the world from zero. Scientists might describe this as the brain reintegrating consciousness, but that phrase only captures the mechanics, not the experience. What's astonishing isn't that neurons restart, it's that you come back as you, that the same familiar feeling of "I am" reappears, as if drawn from nowhere. But maybe it's not nowhere. Maybe that nowhere is the same foundation from which all awareness arises, a kind of ocean beneath the surface of individuality. When you lose consciousness, you sink into that ocean. When you awaken, you surface again. The wave that rises might not be the same one as before, but it's made of the same water. That might explain why, despite all the vanishings, something in you feels unchanged. The body changes, memories shift, years pass. But deep down, there's a subtle sense of sameness, a silent continuity that doesn't depend on memory or story. That sameness might be the awareness itself, the witnessing presence that experiences everything but is untouched by any of it. During sleep or anesthesia, that witness isn't gone. It's just not localized. It's like a radio signal that momentarily loses its receiver. The broadcast continues, but nothing's tuned in to hear it. When you wake, the receiver turns back on. and the signal becomes a world again. Sights, sounds, thoughts, sensations. But the broadcast was always there, humming beneath the silence. This view isn't mystical exaggeration, it's consistent with what you already experience. You can feel that same quiet background even now if you pause. Beneath your thoughts, there's a subtle stillness. Beneath emotions, a steady calm. That stillness doesn't come and go, only your attention to it does. In that sense, consciousness may not vanish during sleep or anesthesia. It may only withdraw from form, leaving the mind empty but not destroyed. You can imagine it like the night sky covered by clouds. When the clouds part, the stars are visible again, not because they appeared, but because they were never gone. The question then shifts from where do you go to what remains when you're not there to know it. If consciousness is the ground of all experience, then perhaps every time you dissolve, you return to what you've always been: the sky behind the clouds, the silence beneath the sound. This idea challenges everything you've been taught about being separate, because if consciousness is shared, if the same awareness flows through every living thing, then the void you fall into isn't just personal, it's universal. When you disappear into sleep or anesthesia, you might be merging back into that universal field, the same vast awareness from which all selves arise. It's not that you go somewhere, it's that the illusion of individuality dissolves, leaving only the whole. When you wake again, it's as if the universe focuses itself through your eyes once more, narrowing the infinite into a point of view, giving shape to the boundless through your particular life. And the cycle continues. Awareness becomes self. Self becomes silence. When you imagine the void, the first image that comes to mind is probably blackness, an endless field of nothing, like space stripped of stars. It feels empty, final, absolute. But what if that picture is wrong? What if what you call nothing is actually the most fundamental something? The silent background that gives rise to everything you've ever experienced, including yourself. Every night when you sink into dreamless sleep, you enter a version of that space. You don't notice it because there's nothing to notice. No time, no images, no sense of self watching. Yet when you wake, hours have passed. Something continued while you were gone. That gap, that blank, is the same mystery that lies beneath anesthesia, and possibly beneath death itself. It's not the end of experience. It might be the foundation of it. The human mind has always feared emptiness. It clings to movement, sensation, and thought as proof of existence. But physics tells a different story. Even what appears empty is far from it. The quantum vacuum, the closest thing science has found to nothing, boils with invisible energy. Particles flicker in and out of existence. Space itself hums with potential, like a vast instrument vibrating with notes we can't yet hear. Maybe your own inner void works the same way. Beneath every thought, every flicker of memory, there's a quiet background of potential. When you fall asleep or sink into anesthesia, consciousness doesn't vanish. It simply returns to that baseline, where activity fades and potential remains. In those moments, you aren't lost, you're home. Imagine the stillness just before a thought forms. There's no image, no voice, no direction. Then, out of nowhere, something appears. A memory, a word, a sensation that out of nowhere isn't truly nowhere. It's the void unfolding into awareness, the blankness before creation, the silence before the first note. It's the same mystery the universe itself seems to hold. Cosmologists say that before the Big Bang, there was no space, no time, only potential. Then, in a burst of unimaginable density, everything expanded outward. The cosmos began not from something, but from a kind of fertile nothing, a vacuum so full of possibility that it birthed galaxies. And so perhaps every time your awareness flickers off, whether in deep sleep, anesthesia, or moments of unconsciousness, you're reenacting that origin on a smaller scale. The mind collapses back into its singularity. and when it wakes again, it recreates the world anew. The mystics of different traditions have hinted at this for centuries. They speak of pure being, the unmanifest, the source from which all things arise and to which all things return to them. The void isn't a place to fear, it's the deepest presence of all. It's the eternal witness that never sleeps, even when you do. But how do you prove such a thing? Science can record the shutdown of brain regions under anesthesia, or the slowing of neural oscillations in deep sleep. But those measurements only describe activity, not awareness itself. They show what consciousness does, not what it is. That's where language falters. The void can't be captured by concepts because it's what allows all concepts to exist in the first place. It's the canvas on which the painting of reality appears. You can sense it sometimes in rare moments of pure quiet, the pause between heartbeats, the stillness between two breaths, the second before a thought arrives. Each gap is a doorway. You touch the void without realizing it because it's not something separate from you. You're woven from it. During sleep or anesthesia, you simply dissolve into it fully. Awareness retracts its focus until nothing remains but the silent field itself. To your everyday mind, that feels like absence. But from another perspective, it's perfect presence. And maybe that's why you never feel time passing when you're gone. The void doesn't measure change, it is the absence of change. It's what time unfolds within. When you return from it, something curious happens. You never feel as if you were missing. There's no sense of a gap in your story. You just wake, stretch, and continue, as though consciousness never really stopped. And maybe it didn't. Maybe the continuity you feel is the echo of something deeper than thought, a background awareness that remains even when your brain goes offline. Anesthesia is one of the strangest ways to glimpse this. A chemical flood quiets your neural activity, and you vanish. Not asleep, not dreaming, just gone. Then, a moment later, or what feels like a moment, you're back, blinking at the ceiling. You know hours have passed, yet your mind insists no time moved at all. It's as if you stepped out of existence and back again, without crossing any distance. That boundary, where consciousness blinks off and on, is one of the deepest mysteries science faces. Where do you go? If the mind were purely mechanical, switching it off should mean destroying the experience completely. Yet somehow, when the circuits hum again, the self resumes right where it left off, intact and continuous. The simplest answer may also be the strangest. Perhaps you never left. Perhaps the awareness behind you, behind thought, memory, and self, isn't something the brain produces, but something the brain tunes into. When the signal fades, awareness doesn't vanish. It just stops broadcasting through your particular pattern. In that view, the void isn't a blank screen. It's the vast field of consciousness itself. Your mind is one ripple on its surface. When the ripple stills, the ocean remains. That might sound poetic, but it could also be literal. Quantum physicists increasingly describe the fabric of reality as informational rather than material. Patterns of relationships, vibrations of energy, probabilities that crystallize into definite form when observed. Consciousness could be the cosmic observer, collapsing potential into reality. If that's true, then what happens when consciousness stops observing? Does the universe fade too? Or does it simply rest, like a stage before the lights come up? When you drift into deep unconsciousness, perhaps the same thing occurs. Your personal universe folds back into the unobserved field, waiting for the next moment of awakening. The truth may be that the void and consciousness are not opposites at all. They are the same thing, seen from different sides. The void is consciousness before it dreams of form. Consciousness is the void expressing itself as form. Every cycle of waking and sleeping, living and dying, is a rhythm between those two faces of reality. You can begin to sense the truth of it when you notice how even during waking life, awareness flickers. Moments vanish between perceptions. A sound begins before you realize it. A thought fades before you can hold it. Tiny disappearances happen constantly. unnoticed pauses that stitch your experience together. The mind edits them out, convinced it's continuous. But in those gaps, you momentarily dissolve. You slip again and again into the same quiet sea that holds you during sleep and anesthesia. This flickering quality is built into reality itself. Physicists sometimes describe the universe as quantized, space and time divided into unimaginably small packets, like frames of a film. Between each frame, what exists? Possibly nothing, or possibly the same silent fullness that underlies everything. Consciousness might work the same way, lighting up in pulses, each thought a quantum of awareness flashing against infinite stillness. If that's true, then the void isn't somewhere you travel to. It's between every heartbeat, beneath every sensation. You live suspended in it, breathing it without knowing. It's the constant presence from which the world arises again and again. When you look at the night sky, you're seeing a map of that paradox. The stars gleam against darkness, yet without that darkness, you couldn't see the stars at all. The emptiness defines the light. In the same way, the blankness of unconsciousness defines what it means to be awake. The nothing gives meaning to the something. Sleep is your daily rehearsal for that cosmic rhythm. You close your eyes, surrender the day, and let go of the world. Slowly, the edges blur. Thoughts unwind, the body loosens, and the boundaries that hold you begin to melt. Eventually, even dreaming stops. There is only stillness. The mind returns to zero. When you wake, everything starts again, built from that silence. The cycle repeats endlessly, life breathing itself in and out. Anesthesia forces the same surrender, but abruptly. It's as if someone presses a hidden switch and the screen goes dark. One instant, you're counting backward. The next, you're back in the room, time having folded in on itself. The experience is unsettling because it exposes how little control you actually have over consciousness. You vanish, and yet you return, untouched, unscarred, unaware of where you've been. What if that where isn't a location at all, but a condition of being? What if it's the same condition that underlies the entire cosmos? A vast, neutral presence that needs no observer because it is the observer of everything? Some people who've brushed against death describe sensations of floating in a featureless light, or of merging with something boundless. Others remember nothing at all, but wake with a lingering peace as if the silence itself were kind. Both accounts may be pointing to the same place, the original field, beyond form and memory. Modern neuroscience approaches this mystery cautiously. It can measure brain waves as consciousness fades, watch patterns of connectivity collapse and reassemble. But no scan can reveal what it's like from the inside of that disappearance. The instruments fall silent exactly where the experience does. What remains unmeasured might not be absence. It might be too fundamental to appear on any graph. When you close your eyes and let thoughts drift away, you can almost sense that frontier. There's a moment when language no longer reaches. When the self grows thin, you don't cease to exist. You simply stop needing to exist as something separate. The boundaries loosen, and what's left is a kind of vast neutrality. Not joy, not fear, not even awareness of awareness, just being. That being may be what everything else rides upon. The galaxies spin within it. Energy dances through it. Your heartbeat echoes its rhythm. The void isn't opposed to life, it's the condition that makes life possible. Think of music. The notes only make sense because of the silence between them. Without the pauses, there would be no melody, only noise. Consciousness and the void relate the same way awareness gives form, the void gives space. Together they compose existence. When you disappear into unconsciousness, you aren't erased. You're returning to the universal rest note, the silence that holds the symphony together. You are still there, but in a way that transcends recognition. This understanding changes how you can approach the idea of nothingness. It's not a cliff edge, but an ocean. Not extinction, but immersion. The self is the wave, the void, the sea. One rises, falls, and rises again. The water never goes anywhere. Even fear begins to shift under this view. Fear depends on the sense of a self that can be lost. But if the self is only a temporary pattern forming within a deeper field, then disappearance isn't destruction, it's return. That realization can turn the idea of the void from terrifying to intimate. Science, philosophy, and spirituality converge here. Though they speak different languages, physics calls it zero-point energy. The base vibration of the cosmos, neuroscience calls it baseline consciousness, the minimal condition from which awareness arises. Mysticism calls it the ground of being. Each is describing the same mystery through a different lens, the still presence that remains when everything else falls away. You encounter it constantly, though you rarely notice. In deep concentration, when thought stops for a heartbeat. In awe, when the mind falls silent before beauty. In grief, when words fail and only presence remains. Each is a brush with the void. A reminder that the emptiness behind life isn't barren, it's sacred. So where do you go when you're gone? You don't go anywhere. You simply stop pretending to be somewhere else. The universe folds back into itself, and you with it. Then, when the pattern begins again, when the neurons fire, when the senses awaken, you unfold once more, a new ripple on the same infinite surface. To know this, even slightly, is to live differently. Sleep becomes a return instead of an escape. Anesthesia becomes less of a disappearance and more of a surrender. Death itself begins to resemble a larger version of what you already do every night: dissolve, rest, and rise again in a new form. The void isn't against you, it's the part of you that never changes. The silence between thoughts, the stillness beneath motion, the awareness behind experience, all are its signatures. You come from it, you move within it, and you will return to it countless times in ways large and small. It's the hidden continuity behind every interruption, the blankness that allows the story to go on. And in that sense, it might be the most real thing of all. If you could rest fully in it, conscious and unafraid, you might discover that it's not dark or cold. It's warm, vast, endlessly gentle, the origin of everything that ever was and ever will be. You've glimpsed the void, that infinite background beneath every thought, every heartbeat, every breath. You've felt the quiet that exists when awareness pauses, during sleep, during anesthesia, in the spaces between one moment and the next. And now, knowing it is there, you begin to realize that everything you fear, everything you cling to, everything that seems permanent, is seen differently from this perspective. Fear itself, for instance, depends on the belief that you are fragile, that you can be destroyed, that consciousness can be extinguished. But when you consider the void, you see that disappearance isn't annihilation, it's immersion into the very fabric of awareness. Your sense of self may fade, your memories may vanish, yet the deeper awareness behind you, the witness that allows existence, is never touched. You've returned countless times from sleep, from anesthesia, from the moments between thoughts. Each time, nothing has been lost. What vanishes is only the temporary garment of identity. Death, when viewed through this lens, begins to look less like an end and more like an inevitable, natural surrender to that same eternal quiet. You might have felt it before in your own life, in the death of a day, in the disappearance of a feeling, in the fading of a memory. You've already practiced letting go countless times. Every night you fall asleep, every moment you surrender to deep focus or to stillness, you touch it. The release, the return, the quiet that is neither frightening nor empty. It is simply the natural state into which all things must eventually flow. You realize that this perspective shifts how you experience meaning. Normally, meaning is constructed. Achievements, possessions, relationships, experiences. All these things are measured against time and permanence, and yet everything you've ever known is temporary. But if you allow the void to be your companion, if you let yourself rest in that deeper continuity, you begin to see that permanence is an illusion. Not a terrifying one, but a liberating one. The world and yourself are temporary waves rising from a boundless ocean, and in that ocean, permanence is not necessary. The source itself is eternal. The forms are ephemeral. This understanding changes how you approach life. You begin to notice that the small anxieties, the fleeting pains, the ephemeral losses, they do not define you, they are only events on the surface of a deep, silent sea. When you stop identifying entirely with the wave and remember your connection to the ocean beneath, fear loses its grip. Life no longer appears as a series of threats to your survival. It becomes a dance, a movement across the surface of something immeasurably vast and unshakable. And yet, you are not detached from reality. In fact, awareness of the void deepens your engagement with life. Because you know that form is temporary, you treat each moment with reverence, the sound of a bird, the brush of wind on skin, the smile of a friend. They are treasures, bright sparks rising from the dark, the ephemeral emerging from the eternal. You savor them more because you understand that the surface is fleeting, but the source is steady. You learn to inhabit both, the wave and the ocean. Sleep and anesthesia are the most tangible ways you have of witnessing this interplay. During sleep, the world disappears, and yet you awake, fully present, often with a sense of renewal. During anesthesia, you vanish completely, sometimes for hours, yet return as though no time has passed, no energy lost, no essence gone. Each disappearance is a rehearsal for the ultimate surrender, the end of life, and each return reminds you that consciousness, at its deepest, is not contingent on the fragile self you identify with. From this awareness, even the concept of mortality changes. You are not simply a body or a mind destined to fail. You are the same boundless awareness that exists beyond the constructs of form. Death is a shift, a release, a return, not an obliteration. And paradoxically, understanding this makes life feel more precious, not less. Because everything is temporary, every breath, every sensation, every thought becomes vivid. Each moment matters because it is the manifestation of the eternal appearing briefly in a finite form. This perspective also reframes suffering. When you are anxious, lonely, or in pain, it is easy to believe that these states define you. Yet they are waves on the ocean, movements on the surface. Even the most intense experiences arise and pass, returning to the underlying stillness. Knowing this allows you to meet suffering with calm, to witness it without being consumed by it. You can recognize the intensity without identifying fully with it. You can grieve without losing yourself, hope without clinging, and live fully without fear of disappearance. You might even start to notice how much of your life is spent avoiding the void. You fill every silence with noise, every pause with thought, every night with activity. Yet when you allow the void to be present, even just for a moment, you experience freedom. You realize that emptiness is not absence, but potential sleep, anesthesia, moments of stillness, the pause between thoughts. They are gifts that let you touch that potential, to rest in the source that holds everything. In this way, the void becomes a teacher. It shows you impermanence without despair, continuity without attachment, and presence without possession. It teaches you to live lightly, to surrender and re-emerge, to appreciate each wave without fearing the depth beneath. You begin to see the paradoxical truth. You are both ephemeral and eternal, fleeting and infinite, surface and ocean. Philosophers have tried to describe this for millennia, often using metaphor. The Tao speaks of the unformed as the origin of the formed. Buddhist texts call it the emptiness that is full of potential. Modern physics points to the quantum vacuum, a field that produces particles without any apparent cause. All of these converge on the same recognition. Beneath appearances, beneath thought, beneath life and death, there exists a ground that is unchanging, inexhaustible, and endlessly creative. You have lived this truth more times than you realize. Every time you fall asleep, every time consciousness fades under anesthesia, Every time your attention lapses and you feel suspended between thoughts, you are participating in it. You are dissolving into the stillness that sustains life, and you are returning with each breath, each beat, each awakening. You are both wave and ocean. This realization can transform how you live. You become more present, more compassionate, more patient. You understand impermanence as the natural rhythm of reality, not as something to resist. You approach fear, loss, and change with calm curiosity rather than panic. You understand that life is a series of forms arising from a timeless source, and that every form will eventually return to that source. The awareness itself, however, endures. Even as the mind races with daily concerns, you can carry this awareness as a quiet anchor. You notice the spaces between thoughts, the silence beneath sound, the stillness beneath motion. You can enter it briefly at will, using breath, attention, or the simple act of noticing. It is always available, waiting beneath the surface of your consciousness, as steady and vast as the ocean beneath the waves. The ultimate gift of this understanding is perspective. You see your life not as a frantic struggle to hold on, but as a temporary manifestation of the eternal. You understand that death is a return, that suffering is a wave, that joy is a spark. And in that perspective, every moment is richer, every connection deeper, every sensation more vivid, because you are aware not only of the form, but of the foundation that underlies it. This perspective is not theoretical. You experience it every night, every time consciousness pauses and returns. Sleep and anesthesia are the mirrors that reveal the truth. You are both finite and infinite, temporary and timeless. The self you identify with may vanish, but the awareness that allows it to exist is constant. It holds everything, even as forms rise and fall. And as you carry this understanding forward, you begin to live differently. You notice the brevity of moments, the grace of impermanence, the comfort of the eternal. You approach life without clinging, without fear, with an openness that allows each wave to rise and fall naturally. You inhabit both the surface and the depth, both the wave and the ocean, fully and entirely. Ultimately, the void is not something to escape, nor a threat to fear. It is the ground of all being, the silent teacher, the place from which life itself unfolds. When you know this, you can meet existence with a quiet joy, a calm surrender, and a profound appreciation for the fleeting yet magnificent forms that arise upon it. You can rest in its continuity while dancing fully in its temporary expressions. Sleep, anesthesia, the gaps between thought, the deep pauses in life, they are your invitations to witness this truth. You return each time, alive, renewed, and aware of both the form and the source. You are a wave on the infinite ocean, a moment of light on the vast darkness, a consciousness dancing within the eternal stillness. You are both nothing and everything, and in that paradox you find freedom. Sleep is the most intimate gateway you have to the truths we've been exploring, the delicate disappearance and re-emergence of consciousness, the quiet void that underlies all experience, and the way your awareness flows in and out of form with a rhythm both subtle and profound. Every night, as you close your eyes, something remarkable happens. The world you inhabit, with all its textures, colours, sounds, and thoughts, begins to fade. The narrative of you, your self-image, your memories, your plans, loosens its grip. The mind begins to drift into a space that feels like nothing, yet is in fact teeming with the potential for everything. You slip from wakefulness into that deep stillness, that void we've been visiting together. And though it feels empty at first, it is far from it. It is the foundation beneath all perception, the canvas upon which consciousness paints its temporary masterpieces. Notice how this process mirrors the cycles of awareness that govern more than just sleep. During anesthesia, consciousness is paused even more abruptly, yet it resumes with the same seamless continuity, as if it had never been interrupted. In dreamless sleep, Hours can pass with no subjective experience, yet when you awaken, you do so fully intact, without loss or fracture. Each disappearance and return is a rehearsal for the ultimate truth, that your deepest awareness exists beyond the constructs of self and time. It is not dependent on form, memory, or sensation. It is simply there, steady, unbroken, and infinite. As you drift further into this reflection, consider the quiet moments between breaths, between thoughts, between the gentle rises and falls of your heartbeat. These gaps are not accidental, they are invitations. Each pause is a doorway into the stillness that underlies all life. In sleep, you surrender fully to them. In waking life, you can notice them if you choose. And when you do, you are touching the same timeless ground. The void is not somewhere else, it is always here, beneath the surface, cradling you, holding you steady as the world unfolds around you. You might wonder how this perspective changes the way you experience being alive. When you see yourself as both transient and eternal, as a wave rising from an infinite ocean, the small anxieties, fleeting frustrations, and ephemeral pains of daily life begin to lose their power. They are movements on the surface, temporary forms that appear and dissolve, while the deep current of awareness continues unbroken. Sleep teaches you this every night by dissolving your sense of separate identity and letting you return to it renewed. The void is not a threat, it is a teacher, a home, a mirror reflecting the truth of existence itself. Imagine yourself sinking into bed, letting the world recede. The room around you becomes soft, the lights dim, and your thoughts begin to slow. You may notice memories of the day flit past, like clouds drifting across a sky. Allow them to pass without grasping. You may feel sensations in your body, the pulse of blood, the warmth of skin against fabric, the gentle rise and fall of the chest. Let them be, without judgment, without control. All of this is surface. Beneath it lies the silence, the void, the infinite stillness that is your true home. As sleep approaches, that stillness deepens. Your mind and body begin to synchronize with the natural rhythms of life. Your breath slows, your muscles relax, and the sense of time itself becomes elastic, stretching and compressing in ways that the waking mind cannot fully perceive. In these moments, you touch a truth that is often invisible during the day, that continuity does not depend on form. The awareness that experiences your dreams, your rest, your deepest silence, does not cease when the body sleeps or when thought pauses. It remains steady and unchanging beneath all fluctuation. Even dreams, with their strange narratives and shifting imagery, are expressions of this underlying presence. In dreams, consciousness experiments with form, creates worlds, and explores possibilities. Yet all of it arises from the same silent ground. The mind may wander, images may appear and dissolve, stories may unfold and vanish, but the observer, the quiet awareness that witnesses it all, persists. Sleep offers a gentle reminder of this continuity. Each night, you vanish into dream or deep stillness and re-emerge, intact and whole, reaffirmed in the subtle rhythm of existence. Consider how this realization affects your understanding of impermanence. Life is composed of forms that arise and fade. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, relationships, and even the self are all temporary. Yet beneath these forms, there is permanence of a different order. The awareness that experiences them, the ground from which all consciousness arises, does not diminish, does not falter, does not vanish. Sleep is a rehearsal of this truth. Each night your sense of self loosens, only to return anew in the morning. Each disappearance and reappearance is a reminder that what is truly yours, the witnessing awareness, cannot be lost. As you relax further into this reflection, notice how fear and tension begin to dissolve. Sleep allows you to surrender to the void without resistance, and in surrender, there is freedom. There is no need to cling to identity, no need to hold tightly to outcomes, no need to resist the flow of existence. Each exhale becomes a release, each breath a soft return to stillness. In these moments, you understand that the void is not empty. It is full of possibility, of potential, of quiet life. It is the foundation beneath all experience, the source from which awareness emerges and to which it always returns. The cycle of vanishing and returning repeats countless times. Sleep, anesthesia, the fleeting lapses between thought. These are all manifestations of the same rhythm. You are a wave rising from the ocean, dissolving back into it, and rising again. Each wave is unique, each form temporary, but the ocean itself remains eternal. You participate in this rhythm every day, whether you realize it or not, and in doing so, you touch the infinite within the finite, the unchanging within the fleeting. Allow your attention to rest on this sensation of continuity. Feel the subtle steadiness that underlies all movement, the quiet presence that observes the flux of your body and mind. You do not need to analyze it, judge it, or change it. Simply notice it. Let it cradle you as sleep draws nearer. You are supported by the same awareness that orchestrates your dreams, your rest, your emergence into wakefulness. You are never truly lost even when form fades. Sleep deepens, and your body and mind sink further into stillness. You may notice a sense of timelessness, where minutes and hours no longer hold meaning. This is the experience of the void as it becomes intimate with awareness. It is not frightening. It is restorative. You are returning home every time you surrender to it, refreshed in the silent ground that holds all being. In this quiet, you can allow the full rhythm of life to unfold, rise and fall, appearing and dissolving, without interference. Even as consciousness recedes, the awareness that witnesses remains. You are both wave and ocean, form and ground, fleeting and eternal. Every thought, sensation, or dream arises from this field, and every disappearance is a return to it. This is the profound gift of sleep, of rest, of surrender. The opportunity to remember the source of your being while letting the surface of experience change freely. As you drift further into slumber, you may sense a profound sense of peace. The mind grows quiet, the body softens, and the self you normally cling to relaxes. You are immersed in the rhythm of vanishing and returning, in the quiet continuity that underlies all life. This is the place where fear, anxiety, and resistance dissolve. It is the foundation of resilience, of calm, of presence. You are resting in what you have always been, awareness itself. Let this awareness accompany you through the night. Sleep is not an absence, but a return, a brief reunion with the infinite, before you awaken to the world again. Your body regenerates, your mind integrates experience, and the deeper field of consciousness reasserts its presence, ready to support the next day's cycle of perception and action. And so you move gently into sleep, carried by the knowledge that the void is not empty, that your awareness is eternal, that disappearance is temporary and return is natural. The quiet background beneath thought, beneath identity, beneath sensation, supports you fully. It cradles you, carries you, and ensures that each reawakening is as whole and complete as the moment before. In the stillness of night, in the surrender of sleep, you touch this truth directly. You rest in it, nourished and renewed, aware that the same presence underlies all existence, all cycles, all forms. And as you sleep, let yourself be guided by the rhythm you have come to know, vanishing and returning, dissolving and emerging, fleeting and eternal. The ocean carries you, the void embraces you, and consciousness flows without end.